Good morning. You're listening to News Talk KOKC. It's just after 7 o'clock Saturday morning. My name is Dave McKay. Joining me is Wally Kerr from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And this is House Talk with Wally Kerr. Good morning, Wally.
Good morning, Dave. How are you this week?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm a little bit more awake this morning than I was last week. Getting up a little early on a Saturday morning, but I've had some coffee in me, and I'm ready to go. I learned so much last week with you than I had known at all about home buying.
Thanks, Dave.
Selling.
I mean, that's really the goal of this show, is to help people understand more about buying and selling homes, answer their questions. I want to be a good resource for listeners, and I really enjoy the real estate business. I've been at it for 36 years. I've also had my coffee this morning, so I'm ready to go with our subjects and our topics today. Just looking forward to spending another hour with you this morning.
Okay, so one thing that you brought up last week, and we'll get to it shortly, is how in about the last 3 years, different parts of the metro in Edmond, Norman, how much home values have gone up. But the number of homes has actually started to go down a little bit, I believe. And I've heard that there is a slower market right now. Okay, so does a slower market mean a drop in home values?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so let's talk about that. Traditionally, January is the slowest month of the year, according to the National Association of Realtors, for home sales. I think it's really three things. Number one, it's colder, especially here locally, right? Number two is people are paying bills after Christmas. But number three is, at least here locally where schools are so important, people don't want to move the kids in January.
Sure.
Additionally, real estate sales are busiest after spring break and let's say through the end of July. And I think the reason, Dave, is because people want to get the kids into the new school they're going to be in before school starts. School always starts here, around August 17th to 20th or something like that. So if you write a contract on a home mid-July, you're closing 30, 35 days later. So traditional part of the year, April, May, June, July. It is a little bit slower right now. Some of that, what you just brought up, is home affordability. In other words, it's just harder for buyers today because rates have gone up, because home values are still up. There's been a little bit of an adjustment. I ran numbers yesterday. And over the last 6 months, there has been a little bit of an adjustment, only about 1.1 to 2.4% decrease in home values in some of the areas of the metro. Okay? There's a few more homes on the market right now. It's stabilized. There's not as many coming on the market, but there are just enough where people are looking around and trying to find that perfect home.
Okay, so there needs to be the sweet spot where the buyer knows they're getting the value and the seller knows they're getting the value, basically. So we had such a rise in these values over the last 3 years. So what you're kind of telling me is that it's starting to slow just a little bit because the people that would be selling are saying, we have quite a bit of equity in our home now. Let's just hang on to this for a little bit. And of course, the people that want to buy are thinking maybe, let's see if it slows down a little bit more, and that helps me out. Are we kind of in that little flux where they're both kind of moving a little bit different directions? To me, that's what it sounds like.
They are. Buyers have been waiting for rates to come down. If they come down, the Fed's indicated they're not going to change that much. I think you look at rates between, say, 5.5 and 6.5, that seems to be about where they're landing. There are still a lot of people that would like to move, and perhaps their needs change. We see people's needs change, say, dad passes away, and now mom needs to move in with the family. Mm-hmm. Somebody gets pregnant with twins, and they've got a 3-bedroom home, and they already have 2 kids. They need a bigger home. There are empty nesters that have a big home they need to sell. There are people relocating. There are people that suddenly need to work from home. So people's needs are always changing. They're looking for homes on the market. Do you know, Dave, right now there's about 50% less homes on the market than there was 10 years ago. So there's fewer homes to choose from.
What's more likely? People are hanging on to those houses more, or the people over here that would be looking to buy want to wait for it to slow down? Like, it sounds like to me maybe it might be becoming a buyer's market coming up pretty soon?
That's hard
Or
to
not?
say. I think that the only argument against that is there's just not enough homes for sale. So if
Okay.
the inventory is only 50% of what it was,
You're true. I'm thinking of the values and pricing, and well, that's well and good if there's only 10 homes versus 100, because those 10 people are going, well, we're hanging on to ours. You're going to have to pay full price. When there's 100 out there, obviously, as a seller, you want to be more attractive because the buyer has so many more options.
and you had to do
So I
more to
get
your
that.
home at that time, right?
Yes.
So I was just thinking the other day. So let's say Dave and his wife came in from Arizona, and they said, "Hey, we want to look at homes between $300,000 and $400,000." I used to go in and search for homes for sale, and I might find 15 or 20 or 25 homes. It was harder for me to determine exactly which ones to show. It was always based on the criteria, based on the buyer. But today, it's totally different. There's not 15 or 20 or 25 homes available today, Dave, in any price range. It's a much more limited number, and that's why buyers are stuck a little bit right now. They're not loving the rates, but I can tell you this, the rates are about where they're going to be for a long time.
So let's forecast a little bit longer as most people look at their home as an investment, especially people that bought their homes in the last 3 or 4 years have made great investments
Oh, man.
all around the metro. So what should homeowners expect over the next 2 to 3 years? We've had 3 years where these values are really going up. Now we want to forecast the other side, the future, the next 2 to 3 years. What could homeowners expect?
I think it's a really good question. A little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about today why the market's not expected to crash.
Okay.
You can go on the internet and read about anything you want, right?
Yes.
Everybody's got their own opinion. And some of them are economists. They're big-time investment managers, portfolio managers, economists, and they all seem to have a differing opinion. So no matter where you read, no matter where you go, you'll see the market's going to crash. You'll see the market's not going to crash. I brought some materials around today that we'll talk about a little later in the show where we can perhaps predict what's going to happen. Here's why most people get into home ownership. They buy a home because they need it for their family. But isn't the American dream of home ownership, Dave, supposed to be, I'm going to buy an asset, and over time it's going to appreciate?
Yes.
I'm going to gain value, and I'm going to gain equity, and I'm making my payments, and the house is going up. I don't think that changes at all. And so the direct answer to your question, over 2 or 3 years, I think homeowners can just expect their homes to continue to appreciate. Yeah, there's going to be some small fluctuations, right? If some small fluctuations, maybe it goes down a little bit here, goes up, but we're not talking about going down big time numbers because our market's really good. We'll talk about that later in the show today, if that's okay with you.
Okay, so we did mention about values going up in the last 3 years, and it's everywhere from Edmond to Norman to Nichols Hill. So we have price points all across the place. We have $250,000 homes to near $1 million homes. What is the house? Paint me a picture of the house that is selling right now.
Okay, good. I like that. Keep in mind there's couples getting married every weekend, right? You probably get invited to a lot of weddings, and I do
Yes.
too. I don't really like going to weddings, but I go and I smile, right? So, but kids are getting married every weekend, and first-time buyers don't typically buy a $400,000 or $500,000 home, right?
Correct.
But values have risen so much over the last few years, like you said, across the metro, whether it's Midwest City, Blanchard, Purcell, or Guthrie, or Edmond or Norman, all the values have gone up, so the prices are up. What I really see super hot, anything that's 100, 120, 140, red hot, typically still multiple offers. We talked last week at our show about how for a long time the market was just saturated with people offering far above listed price, multiple offers, and then these things called escalation clauses.
Yes.
Yeah, I still see in those lower price ranges, let's say even below 250, below 275, perhaps even in a higher priced community like Edmond or the Nichols Hills area, $300,000 is almost a starter home now. So even though it's time of year and it's a little bit slower, there's still a lot of pent-up demand. There's a lot of people that made offers on homes this past spring and summer and lost out, making offers 5 and 6 and 7 times and getting beat out over and over and over. Some of them just got frustrated and decided to rent for 6 months or a year. Those people still want to buy and they're back in the market either now or they'll be back in the market again in the next few months. So I think that segment of the market, let's just say generally under $300,000, certainly under $250,000, still remains a red hot price point or price points.
Okay, so that's akin to us going back 20 to 30 years and homes being 100,000, 120,000 and going, wow, I hope I can get into that or whatever. And we sit here and look at my knowledge of about 24 years ago, Kim and I buying a house, I think we paid $95,000 for it.
What you just hit on was what we mentioned 5 minutes ago, and it's affordability. Yes. It's the same way with cars. I've been watching recently to find a nice used car, and they're just up so much in price. And I look and think, wow, those prices are really high on these used cars. But it is an affordability deal. Yeah, that house that was $125,000, even 6 years ago, is now probably $190,000 or $200,000. A little frustrating for the first-time buyers. They're a little frustrated with interest rates and with home values. But the good news is our market didn't go crazy high. We increased a lot in values, but certainly not like some of the coastal areas.
San Diego.
Right. Well, San Diego has had a big adjustment in values. Nothing like what we've seen here in Oklahoma City. I looked again and only saw 1% to 2% corrections from when the market was really hot last spring, Dave, like April, May, June, and the market was on fire. Yeah, there's been a little bit of an adjustment. I don't think it's necessarily at all that the values changed. They only changed because the buyer demand fell off a little bit. But that buyer demand will increase in the springtime, the traditional selling and buying season,
sure,
when people are ready to make a move and it's closer to the end of school for the kids, right?
Yes.
Always seems like the best time to move the kids is when we don't disrupt them and disrupt their lives and their grades by moving them in January or February. Not everybody moves to the same school district. They'd like to.
Sure.
But how do you do that when there's no homes for sale?
Sure, and you're looking for value. So I want a 2,500 square foot home, and I could go to this neck of the woods, or I can kind of pull back and go over here, and I'm going to pay $25,000 to $30,000 to $40,000 less, maybe, because I'm just a couple streets away or a city or two away over here. And that way I could pay a little less.
Yeah, you're willing to concede in some situations, but for a lot of folks, they want to keep the kids in the same school district. And again, with fewer homes for sale, there are fewer options available, but that will typically always change. I'm not a soothsayer, didn't bring my crystal ball in here today, but my prediction is we're a little slower, mostly because of time of year right now.
Okay.
People are getting used to these rates, which I think are going to be around for a long time. And I think here in the springtime, things will really pick up.
Also, I'm sure this plays a part. You have the people that are actively ready to sell their home and buy a new home, whether it's just down the street or in a new city. But basically, let's just say in the Oklahoma City metro, someone's going to move maybe from Yukon to Edmond, to Norman to Piedmont or whatever. They're looking and they're ready to do it. They're ready to buy. Then you have the passive home buyers. So you have the people that it's the time of the year and we thought about it last year and we'll look around. If something really kind of trips our fancy, maybe we'll start to move on it. Does that play a little role in if there's not so many homes and someone who is not as aggressive, but now they're starting to think about it, obviously that's even going to drive a harder bargain for other buyers as well, correct?
You're asking what a lot of people do, and I talk to buyers on the phone every single week who say, we really weren't in the market, but this one home popped up, and this is probably a home we would consider making a move even this time of year, but maybe we're concerned a little bit about the current market, and we're not so sure that we can get our home sold. And that's why I invented this guaranteed home sale program that we've been running since 2007. They look at me and say, don't want to get stuck with 2 house payments at the same time. So Wally, how does your program work? And it's real simple. I just tell them and say, let's go put your home on the market. And if it's not sold in an agreed period, I'll step in and buy your home for cash at a price we agree to up front. You get into the new home. I'll take care of your old home. It will be at a price that we both agree to. It's a win-win for both parties. Can't be a win-lose, right? Can't just be good for me.
Sure.
Can't just be good for them. I've definitely lost money on homes that I wanted to be fair on. The goal is to help that person who says, that home did come on the market. That is a great home for my family. May not be the ideal time of year, but tell you what, my kids are already in the Piedmont School District, and I'll just make the drive for the next 3 or 4 months until school is out, and then this will be a lot easier on the commute for the kids to school. So I hope I was clear there.
Yes, I kind of keep beating home the idea that you told me in the last 3 years, because I still think it's amazing how much home values have gone up across the metro. And I think this would be a great time right now. I want to give out your text number if that's cool. It's 405-330-3000. 330-3000. They could just text you. And I keep saying text because, again, like when we go to the car dealership, we get swarmed by the salesman. So you're not going to call them back or anything. If someone wants to know the value of their home, again, we talked about how these home values have really gone up the last 3 years, and someone listening, I'm kind of interested now. I want to see what my home value is. All they have to do is text their address to 330-3000, and also maybe between 1 and 10, kind of rank their home, what they think. Like, I know there might be a couple of things I need to clean up, so I'm looking at a 7.5 or so. Or I've really maintained this home. It's only 6 years old. I think it's an 8 or a 9. That's all I need to do.
Or I just completed a remodel, and I think on a scale of 1 to 10, my home is a 15.
Yeah, because I put all that blood, sweat, and equity into it. So they could just text that and just get a text back from you a little later on the day. And here's a ballpark figure of what we think your home would be worth.
You hit it on the head. We've been doing this for about 2 years. The listeners really like it. You don't have to talk to me at all. We would like to know the condition of a home. Text 330-3000 any time of day. Really give me a day to get it done, and they'll get an estimated value of their home based on the comparable sales in their area. Whatever they tell me, I'm going to use, and I'll look it up at Google, try to find as much information as I can about the condition of the home. I might go in and find some online pictures, online from realtor.com or from something like Zillow, and look at pictures, but it also helps to know the condition of the home, and I'll shoot you a value. Happy to do it. No phone call at all. I'll just shoot a text message back. So thanks for mentioning that.
You're listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty on KOKC. Hey, Wally.
I'm here. Here for your questions.
You mentioned last week that everyone in your office, you're trying to get to your office after lunch, and people are stepping out of their offices going, hey, Wally, hey, Wally, hey, Wally, because they all have questions. They need an answer to something really quick. So perfect time. Hey, Wally, I have a question for you. I'll get direct mail from time to time. I get one piece a week on, sell us your house, sell it now, no closing costs, don't fix anything, no repairs. Or I hear the commercials about, you can sell us your house with the tenant in it. We'll buy it from you as is. What's the benefit to me if I wanted to sell my home to go with an investor?
What a great question. Because I'm like you, it seems like every time I turn on the radio, that's all I hear. Sometimes in commercial breaks, I'm hearing two radio commercials in every break that are saying, I'll buy your home. So let's take that down to just what it is. They're investors, which is what you just said.
Okay, yeah.
They're going to buy your home to make a return. Let's do a simplified example. If you came to me today and said, hey, I'd like to have some income, some rental income. I'd like to buy a duplex. You wouldn't buy the duplex because you were in love with the duplex. Typically, duplexes are not beautiful properties just for the purpose of they're there for one reason. It's utility.
Yes.
It's something that's going to bring you a return. And if the return were good enough, you'd probably buy a duplex in any condition. You're not going to live in that home. I see investors today who want a return on their money. We can divert here for 30 seconds. During inflationary periods, think about this. Let's say inflation was 9% in a year's time, and you had $100,000 sitting in the bank a year ago. What's that $100,000 worth 1 year later if inflation's 9%?
$109,000?
Actually, $91,000. So if there was 9% inflation reduces,
okay, yes.
right? You went the other direction. So
I did go that
it's okay.
way. I'm thinking I'm making money off of inflation.
Well, I'm a mathematician. I was a mathematician in college. So
Well, I'm not, apparently.
that's right. You're probably a lot better in science than I am. So, by the way, I was lousy at history. So I got $100,000, but maybe it was 18 months ago. And then a year later with 9% inflation, it's not worth $100,000 anymore.
I don't like that.
So investors have been looking for a place to land their money, which is a good long-term investment. Why do they choose real estate? For the same reason you and I talked about in our last segment. 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, you know that it's going to appreciate in value. You can look at the trends. You can look at times when we've been through the goods and the bads, but housing values over time just continue to go up, up, up. So let's answer about investors. Everything to an investor is just a rate of return. It's a return on their investment. They're buying these homes not because they want to live in them. Wouldn't you agree if we went and put your home on the market today, Dave, and you said, I really want to sell my home to a family that's going to love my home just like we did. I love my neighbors. They're great people. I've promised them we'll get good neighbors.
Sure.
Okay, right? That's that's how you want to take care of your neighbors.
We say that a lot, too.
We do.
Yeah.
And I hear people say that a lot. I really want to meet the buyers to my home. We lived in our home for 10 years. I raised my kids here. This is my mother's home. It's really important that we sell it to someone who's going to love it. Investors don't buy homes because they love them or they are emotionally tied to them. They buy them for a rate of return. So them looking for a rate of return is typically not good for a homeowner. They're looking to profit on it. Let's say that they buy it and they fix it up and they sell it. You mentioned the word flipping. They're looking to make a profit.
Sure.
So instead of if you sold your home to an investor and then the investor needed to go make money on it and they sold it again, you're giving your profit to the investor.
Sure.
You've used eBay before, right?
Yes.
Okay. What's unique about eBay? Well, to me, what I love about eBay is no matter what you put on there for sale, if you go list an item for sale and you list it for 5 days or 7 days or 10 days, you know what's interesting? You always find out exactly what it's worth because it gets into a bidding war, right?
That's true. And it's worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it.
So I used to use eBay a lot back in the day. And there were items I'd put on and they would get 15, 20, 25, 30 bids, maybe a few more bids. These were just personal items. This was old electronic equipment from back in the day. And here's what I knew. When you get people bidding against it, let's face it, what's better? Is it better to have one offer for whatever you're selling, or is it better to have 12 offers? What would you want?
12 offers.
Why would you want 12 offers?
Because they're going to keep bidding it up higher and higher.
You're going to determine exactly what market value is.
Yes.
So that's sometimes the problem with selling to an investor.
Okay.
An investor walks in and says, I'll give you this. And maybe you look and say, well, that sounds pretty fair to me. I don't want to pay any closing costs, and I don't want to do any repairs, so this sounds pretty good. But I think it's better. I can take a home, put it on the market, get 5 or 10 or 15 offers, market it aggressively. The owner gets to pick the highest offer that they want with the terms that they like, get it out there and expose it to the marketplace. Let's face it, you go sell to an investor, and if the home never goes on the market, nobody ever gets to see it besides the investor.
No one knows about it.
So we're working with a pool of investors out of Phoenix. There are 64 investors. Do you know they won't buy a home that's already on the market? If it's listed for sale and on the market, they won't make an offer.
They're going against other buyers?
They are. They want a shot at buying it under market value before the rest of the market gets to look at it. You tell me. I don't think that's in any homeowner's advantage.
No.
Right? I've helped homeowners before and said, why don't we do this? Let's go put your home on the market for, you tell me, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. The investor's not going to go away with their price. It's a rate of return, and they will typically hold their offer in place. Go put the home on the market, and if it doesn't sell for more, I've released the listing before and let them go in and sell it to the investor. that's how confident I am that I can get someone better terms at a better price than what they're going to get from an investor. They just want a return on their investment, which means you're giving away part of your profit.
Sure. And let's be frank, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are looking to get the best value out of your home, you've lived in it for a while, and you want to carry that equity onto your next home, the obvious answer is you want to go with a realtor and get all the different bids in there. You want multiple buyers.
So let's address a question that I bet a lot of people are thinking about, and they think, I don't want to pay realtor fees. I don't want to pay a brokerage fee. Let me just tell you about a couple of offers I've looked at over the last few months, and they include this thing called a convenience fee. And I looked at one recently, and it said the convenience fee was 7%. So the owner was offered $236,000, but that was the sales price. Then they started deducting fees, and one of those was a 7% convenience fee. In other words, I'm going to give you $236,000, and the owner goes, great, I like that price.
But that's
then you start looking at
$17,000 off
the bottom line in this convenience fee, which these are typical inside the investing world, and they go try to get you interested up front in what looks like a really good offer, and then they start deducting fees. Then they go in and they say, you won't have to do any repairs, but we're going to go in and do an inspection anyway, because we wouldn't buy anything unless we inspected it first.
Yes.
And they come back and say, whoops, you got some items here. We are going to need those repaired, but if you're not going to repair them, tell you what, you can just deduct this amount of money, and normally it's a big amount of money. Let's say there's $1,500 or $2,000 in repairs. They may ask for $3,000 to $4,000 so they could go in and hire somebody to fix those repairs quickly.
Sure.
And the homeowner doesn't have to mess with doing those on their own. So the difference between what they offer and what the bottom line is typically is less than what it costs for us to go put a home on the market. And here's the best part. Now you get multiple offers. It's exposed to more buyers, just like we talked about on eBay. You can see how many people are looking at it, you can see how many people watch it, and then how many offers you get. And I think that's the key is for any owner, the more offers they get during this really hot period in the market, when I knew we were going to get multiple offers on properties, I always just told my owners this, you're going to probably get 10 to 20 offers or more on your property. You're going to get to pick the best one. And I can tell you this, if you get 10 to 20 offers, you'll know exactly what your home is worth. You won't leave any money on the table because people know that they are competing to buy your property, and they're going to offer as much as they're willing to pay. And that's what I hate to see anybody do, is leave any money on the table. Minimum, call me or text me. I think people need somebody who knows the area, is an expert in the area, knows the real estate and what it's worth. If they just want to say, hey, Wally, shoot me a text, 330-3000. Hey, Wally, I've got an investor offer for my home at 123 ABC Street of $220,000. Does this look fair to you? Probably my first question is going to be, is that how much you get in pocket? Or is that just how much the initial offer is? Because I want to figure out if there's convenience fees, if there are repairs that are going to be in there. I'm glad to help people, and they don't even have to call. That's a good text to 330-3000 question. Wally, I got an investor's offer for $220,000 for my home. Does this look fair to you? First of all, find out what a real buyer will pay. Find out what a buyer would pay that would live in the home and love it. And only sell to an investor if somebody won't pay what the home is really worth. I can tell you this with a lot of certainty, Dave. If a home is worth $300,000, a typical investor is not going to pay $300,000.
Sure.
But a buyer that wants to live in the home and it's perfect for their family, they'll pay $300,000 for that home, maybe a little more. Maybe $305,000 or $310,000 or $315,000 if it's in a great neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So when someone wants to limit your desire to market the home first, kind of tells you clearly what their intentions are, that they're trying to take perhaps advantage of gaining part of the equity that you should be putting in your own pocket.
Sure.
You making the profit.
Sure.
Instead of the investor making a profit.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And like you said, people coming in to buy the home, they're not looking to turn a profit right away. Most families are going to be, what is the stat on that? how long does a family move into a home before now they're itching to move out?
That's a good question.
Kind of like, oh, it's always 4.7 years, or it's 8 years, or it's 10 years? What is that?
Yeah. Great question again. You get some great questions today. You must have been sitting up last night on
Yes.
Friday night where you should have been sleeping earlier so we could make this early morning show. Let's answer that quickly. Used to be the average family moved about every, I think the number was 5 or 6 years. I know it's longer now, and the average family is more like 7 to 8 years. Probably part of what could change that too and extend that are the historically low interest rates that people got into over the last 2 or 3 years. And we talked about this a little bit last week without elaborating too much. There are some mortgage companies locally who have put together some really good programs. So if you were listening last week, this week, and you said, my needs have changed, then I'm not real excited about an interest rate of 5.5% or 6%. I like the 3% rate I've got right now. There are buydowns and ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, that are some really, really good products that the lenders have come up with today to solve that answer for people when they say, I like my rate now and I don't like the current rates the way that they are. And there are, again, great programs which I think will benefit a lot of people and help them keep that payment where they want it to be.
Okay, so you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, if you were listening last week. If they weren't listening last week, I want to mention that basically it's podcasted, the show is, and they can go to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. What do they need to search when they search podcasts?
Sure. I believe it's just under our name, Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and our team is called Kerr Team. It's my last name, Kerr, Kerr Team. So Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, Kerr Team. You can typically find any of these podcast shows. You can actually ask questions there. So we've talked about people texting questions in, but by all means, look me up on social media. Let me be clear. You don't have to talk to me to get a question answered. This is intended to be informative and helpful, and I want you to feel like you're dealing with an expert who will give you the best advice possible. That's my goal for this show.
Yes.
And last week, one of the things we talked about that was kind of exciting, that I think really some people got excited about hearing, was the increase in values in homes. We talked about some different areas. Let's mention a couple more for our repeat listeners.
Okay, I love this part.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Some of these went so far up in just 3 years.
I think you posted this on your bulletin board here at the station last week. Is that right?
Yeah, I was telling people about it because it was really,
people here at the station that live all across the metro that drive here to work. So here's a couple of amazing stats. Since 2019, these are numbers that were run at the end of 2019, at the end of 2022. So 3 years, right?
Yes.
Blanchard increased from $223,000 average sale price in 2019. How about all the way up to $310,000 at the end of 2022?
Close to $90,000.
Dave, that's almost exactly right. $90,000. How about looking at, we talked about a couple of other cities last week. Let's look at Choctaw. Average sales price up from $229,000 to $308,000 in 2022.
Wow.
I even ran a few more numbers this week. How about in Guthrie? This was an astounding number to me in a 3-year period from 2019 to 2022. Guthrie average sales price was up $80,000. Even in Harrah. How about in Harrah, Oklahoma? Harrah values were up $70,000 in a 3-year period. Purcell values, you ready for this? Up $90,000 on average.
So what this tells me, I'm going to interrupt you, because what this tells me is I don't have to buy a home in Nichols Hills. I don't have to buy a home in Edmond. I don't have to buy a home in the heart of Oklahoma City. You know what? This fits my budget, and I want to move out to the country a little bit. I could still get a good rate of return, or I can build up equity all across the metro.
Absolutely.
So this is really, is this kind of a statewide, or is it really kind of focused around the metro?
There's a good question that I haven't studied. So I'll plead the fifth there. I haven't studied the whole state. Let's just say it's metro-wide, but it goes to Shawnee. It goes all the way to El Reno, down to Purcell. We're up to Guthrie. It's kind of my service area.
Sure. Okay.
And I want to apologize. I get kind of excited about these increases in value, only for a reason. It's nice to see people benefit from home ownership. And that excites me doing this for 36 years.
And you don't have to live in what people perceive as places where the home values are going to go up year after year after year. I can pick different places to live where my family is, or where I really want my kids to be in school, or close to work. I don't feel like, wow, I'm going to buy a house here. It's 45 minutes from my job, but I know I'm going to get the most out of it when I want to move in 10 years. No, like you mentioned right now, there's home values increasing close from $90,000 to $100,000 in equity in 3 years, and it could be all across the metro.
I haven't seen anywhere in the metro where values appreciated less than about 27 to 28% over a 3-year period.
Okay.
But some of the areas are 35 to 38% over 3 years. You know what that's done for me, Dave, and for you, is it's insulated our market to where we're not seeing foreclosures like we did in the past. And we'll talk about that today in our last segment, about why is a market crash not expected here. I won't let the cat out of the bag, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it has everything to do with what we've just discussed about appreciation.
Yeah, let's get into that. You're listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr on Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. If you have a question for Wally, you can text him at 330-3000. Of course, area code 405. 330-3000. You can say, hey, Wally, I want to know this, or hey, Wally, I want to know that. And you'll get a text back, not a phone call. You can also text your address and let Wally know on a scale of 1 to 10, basically what you think of your home. I think my home's a 7, or I think it's an 8. And you're going to get a ballpark figure of what your home may be worth. And that's just a simple text to 330-3000.
And I promise it'll be pretty accurate. If you've got sales around you that I can use for comparable sales, I'll give a pretty accurate estimate of value. I'll give you a range, but it'll be pretty accurate.
Okay, so earlier this morning we talked about, again, I want to reiterate how over the last 3 years, different parts of the metro, different cities, home values have really gone up. And the number of homes for sale right now have dwindled. So that sounds really good as a homeowner, because there's not too many homes out there that are flooding the market. The values are going up. Now, Dave McKay, being the pessimistic guy, is saying like, well, that's great. Everybody's going to get all this money for their homes. When I'm ready to sell, something's going to happen. Is a market crash something that could be on the horizon? Can you tell me why or why not there could be a market crash? Because everything seems great right now. The only way to go is down for Dave McKay.
So that's another good topic to talk about. I'm an investor, and I've got investments in, stocks and bonds and mutual funds. I'm always asking the same thing. Hey, wow, my portfolio looked really good, and now it kind of went bust. So there are people probably saying, I can take the hit in my investment portfolio, but I sure don't want my home value to go down a whole bunch. So I think your question's good. And again, you can read all sorts of things on the internet. You can probably find somebody who's going to predict doomsday, right?
Yes, and you seem to be more even keel about it. Like you don't let it affect you like some people get affected by it.
First of all, 36 years in the business. If I thought I own, that we've acquired over the years, we have some rental properties ourselves, some nice rental properties. If I thought that those market values were going to crash, I would sell them. There are some investors that have definitely sold their rental properties, seeing how high the values were. Some people get tired of being landlords, and they just want to sell, and the headaches be over. There are great tenants. We have great tenants inside our properties. Sometimes there's a not so great tenant. So there's a lot of people that have cashed out, but let's get back to some factual data about why we don't believe. Could there be a correction? A bit of a correction? We mentioned that earlier in the show. 6 months ago, 9 months ago, the spring of 2021, the market was absolutely at its hottest point in 40 years here in the metro.
Okay.
And values were up. I did a study on that yesterday and just happened to see that in areas, Edmond, Yukon, Mustang, Moore, Norman, Choctaw, just some of the cities here in the metro, that yes, there was a little bit of a correction in values. Does that mean they're going to stay down? No. As we talked earlier, there's a little bit less demand this time of year. If someone absolutely has to sell their home right now, it looked like it might sell for 1 to 1.5 or 2% less than the hottest part of the market a year ago when there were fewer homes on the market, Dave, than at any time in history. It's a relatively low number still. As a matter of fact, it's 50% less available homes than it was 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's quite a bit.
The inventory on the multiple listing service in Oklahoma City, a balanced market is about 6,000 to 8,000 homes for sale. Right now, there's about 4,700. So it is a lower number. So this contributes to why we don't see a crash, especially here locally. Let's talk about a few reasons. So you remember the last bust? You remember the last
2009?
Yeah, we had a kind of a runaway market in 2006, 7, and 8.
Okay.
Do you know the appreciation rates weren't anything near where they are today? It was busy, and there was a boom in housing, but housing values didn't go up that much. Then in 2009, the mortgage mess hit, right? Bank of America bought Countrywide. Countrywide had a lot of bad loans. You're going to laugh, but you know we call those liar loans?
Liar loans?
Liar loans. L-I-A-R. Okay. You know why? There was these things that some people are going to remember called a stated income loan. You know what that was?
Okay, so it's basically someone saying that they made more money than they really did.
That's
right?
it. If they had enough of a down payment, it was typically 30%. I know someone who worked at a convenience store. No names. The innocent are protected on this show, okay? And he was making $9, $10 an hour, but put 30% down and told the mortgage company, I'm making $12,000 a month as a district manager. He got what we now call a liar loan. Now, the mortgage company was fine with it, and that was a Fannie Mae approved product. That was accepted in the industry nationwide if you put 30% down.
That's what I was going to say. So if you have the cash up front, they're willing to overlook a couple of things.
If you had the cash up front, these loans are gone now.
Okay.
They weren't really called liar loans. We call that slang in the real estate industry.
Sure.
It's not intended disrespectful at all.
No, but you fibbed on, to basically fill out the paperwork and get everything approved.
It was stated income.
To get those numbers up a little bit.
Why would they allow those? Well, with 30% down, even if the home got foreclosed on and the person really didn't make that much money and stopped making payments, the mortgage company really wasn't in trouble, right? The buyer put 30% down.
Sure.
Let's get back to what we said we'd talk about. So the lending practices are much stronger and better today. And I think most people understand that, is that today's lending standards and guidelines and requirements were fixed by the mortgage mess. Okay, so better loans. Today, the last segment, we talked about how much equity people have in homes. Okay, what would be bad for our market, Dave? Would it be foreclosures and too many houses for sale and you drive down a street and there's 7 signs in the yard?
Well, sure. If you're the one on that street trying to sell your home, who wants to buy it when they see no one wants to live there?
Exactly.
Basically.
But today, values have gone up so much that even if someone gets behind on payments, they could typically sell their home, pay all their costs, and still put money in pocket. This has been really good for the market. The way that we've gone up so much in values over the last few years have insulated you and me in the Oklahoma City metro to where we don't have to worry about foreclosures and a big drop in values because of too many homes on the market. So lending practices and the market we just went through increased values a lot. There's still go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned that there was like 4,700 homes that are on the market. And it's usually maybe 8,000 to 9,000. So those homes, I imagine the bulk of those or all those are people that are selling their homes. What does it do with home builders? So you have home builders that are, does that kind of flood in? Are they kind of a little late to the game with the home values and now they're trying to catch up, build more homes? What does that do? Because now you have not just a 1-to-1 ratio, you have a home for sale, but then you also have a new home over here for sale, and you have that one buyer.
It sure did blow up for builders. They weren't prepared. We never have seen anything like that. They couldn't build them fast enough. They couldn't get materials fast enough. You probably are aware, getting materials during COVID.
Oh, yes.
Things that are coming over
supply
on boats
chain
and
issues.
Ships,
We hear that on everything.
Absolutely.
I can't buy potato chips. I can't buy 2x4s.
There were builders who their contracts might have said, we'll build it in a year, and they couldn't even get it done in a year. So builders, there's still a lot of pent-up demand. The builders are building a lot of homes right now, but I know a lot of them that are being very careful not to get too much inventory on the ground. Let's face it, we talked about the busiest part of the season for people moving is in the springtime. They're getting ready for that right now.
Okay.
The builders are getting ready, so they're putting more homes on the ground because they're anticipating the demand during the spring and summer. There's a lot of millennials. The biggest age group right now, you and I know, Dave, are millennials. And millennials are in their buying years for homes. For instance, how many people do you know that are in their 70s or 80s that are renting out and buying homes? They're more likely to be slowing down in life.
Sure. Yes.
Maybe moving to a community where they can live and be in independent living or retired living. They're not the biggest segment of buyers, and it's not the people that are in their 20s. It's now the millennials who have gotten into their 30s and 40s and buying homes. So that segment, which is the largest part of the home buying population, are in their buying years right now. That's contributing to a good market. The Hispanic population, I'm really excited about this. The Hispanic population is a young and it's a growing demographic.
Yes.
Here inside the States, and they're really keen on home ownership. And I think that speaks, we have a very large Hispanic population here in the Oklahoma City metro area. It's awesome to see them excited about home ownership, the education of their kids in our school system. They like it here. So low inventory helps. We don't want the market flooded with homes. That leaves you thinking, pretty good shape. There's not going to be a crash. Okay. The lending practices are better, right? The home builders are placing homes in the marketplace left and right, building fast to try to get caught up with all the pent-up demand. They couldn't build them fast enough this last year. They're building because they're looking at, they visit with their bankers, they talk about real estate trends, and they believe that they're going to need that inventory to sell this spring, this summer, this fall. Okay. Hispanics, again, we talked about, are a growing demographic in our state. And then here's the big one. Again, foreclosures are low. That's always an indicator of what the housing market's going to do. And why are foreclosures low? Because people's homes are worth so much money now. They increased so much in value that even if they hit hardship, they lose a spouse, they end up with a medical injury, they lose a job, they could still sell their home, pay their closing costs, hire a professional, perhaps like me, to sell their home and still have a lot of money left over, as opposed to trying to sell it and being what we call upside down, right?
Yes,
Where you try to sell the home and you owe $300 and you're only going to net $284,000. You're upside down.
Sure.
You can't sell it. That's not the case after this really strong market we've been in.
Okay, so with the home builders that we're talking about, what does that do with the home builders are coming along, they're building homes, releasing them out into the market, and does that mean not so many of the homes that people are trying to sell are going to sell? What does that do?
There's always been a balance of both.
Okay.
For as long as I've been in real estate, 36 years, there were always brand new homes for sale, always. I think it depends on the buyer. There's a lot of people that want that new car feel, right?
Yes.
Smells like a new car, feels like a new home, something
Yes.
that's never been lived in. I see maybe buyers who have a young child don't want to buy a home where the carpet's been walked on, and they want to take their shoes off and they want everything to be fresh and clean, so their new baby or their children can crawl around on the carpet with their peace of mind. So I also know that there's a lot of really highly desired neighborhoods where there aren't any new homes for sale. I think that maybe answers your question a little more directly.
Yes. So I think again, I'm not a math major. I was trying to do a one-to-one correlation where at the end of the day, the books were balanced. But no, you even mentioned earlier, there's about 4,700 homes for sale right now, and usually that number is closer to 9. So it's just basically homes come on the market from sellers that lived in those homes, and there's homes that come on the market from home builders, and it's just the supply. They're restocking it because there is a demand always for homes, whether you're moving into a new area or it's for a factor of reasons, for size, like we talked about. You want to upsize, you need to downsize. There's always a need for homes. And basically what home builders are doing, along with sellers, they're just stocking their products on the shelves so they're available to purchase.
Our population continues to grow.
Yes.
It's not going down.
Yes.
Oklahoma City is a great place for people to live. Great schools, great people, great community, great transportation. We're much more affordable than other parts of the United States. So we are a growing population, which means we still need more homes. I still think that existing homes compete with brand new homes for lots of reasons. Normally, the newer homes are on smaller lots today. There aren't as many trees because the neighborhoods have been cleared. So you got to wait for the trees to grow up. You got to wait for the landscaping to look pretty. You've got probably a little bit smaller yard. And let's face it, there's a lot of people that would love to live in the neighborhood they grew up in. We see
a little nostalgia.
Hundreds of buyers every year that say, I want to be back in the neighborhood that I grew up in. I love the park. I love the school where I went to school, growing up.
Sure.
Or I want to live near my friends, and they're inside this neighborhood over here. So there will always be a balance of existing. And let's go back to those numbers again. About 4,700 homes on the MLS right now. Historically, a balanced market between about 6,000 and 8,000. So there's still a low number of homes. There's a pretty good selection out there right now. Sellers can get a great price for their home, but don't forget, sellers, it's really important to the buyer that they also feel like they win. And so when you're negotiating, be really careful to, especially if you've got a great buyer with who can pay cash, or they've got a great pre-approval letter or a big down payment. They can close when you want to close, or they will be negotiable to a closing date. That's a good one. If you feel like you're giving a little bit to what a buyer wants, try to meet them halfway and say, tell you what, I'd be okay taking that offer if you'll allow me to pick the closing date. And maybe that's a date that's more comfortable to you as a home seller that gives you the time to pack your things, go to where you're going, and not have to make an overnight move.
Because when everyone feels like they win, at the end of the day, when you moved out, you just feel great about yourself.
It's a give and take.
You don't want someone just to feel, regardless if it's the other party or not. You're right. And it makes it easier on you if sometimes you're the one that's a little bit more, that you can bend a little bit to help the other person out. Sometimes, like you mentioned, it's whether it's closing cost or $1,000 here just to make this a little bit more, whatever I'm trying to say, easier.
I think what you're saying is people want a fair deal.
Yes.
Everybody wants to walk away feeling like it was a fair deal for both of them. Mm-hmm. So if you're selling your home, keep that in mind as you negotiate.
You're listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr. We're here every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. on KOKC. And again, as we like to talk about, you could text Wally if you're thinking about making a move or you want to sell your home, and you're not going to get a phone call or anything. You just text Wally at 330-3000. You want to give him your address, maybe rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the condition of your home, and you'll get a text back a little later on with what we think is a good value for that house, and then you can go from there. And if you want to go from there, you want more information, you can go to wallyhasthebuyers.com. So that's a real easy thing. Just go to the website. Again, I'm not picking up the phone. Of course, at the end of the day, if I want to call, I can give you a call. But go to wallyhasthebuyers.com. And if you missed the first part of this show and you missed last week, you can go to Apple Podcasts, go to iHeartRadio, and you could search Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty.
Kerr Team. Right.
Okay.
And pick up our podcasts, and I hope our information is helpful. That's the purpose of this show, is to help people who have questions and want knowledge about buying and selling a home in the current real estate market. And looking forward to being back here with you again next week, Dave.
I'm going to learn some more. And I admittedly, like this week, my head was kind of spinning. You covered a lot of stuff. And I'm going to have to hop on the podcast and listen to that again. So I'm ready next week. But, hopefully, if I'm like our listener and I'm a little confused on things, I'm going to learn a lot each week. I might learn a little. I might pick up that nugget that I want to know that's going to help me down the road. And I know for me, that's helping out a lot. You know everything.
How about you know what? Here's what I tell my new agents in the business when we train them, is there are no dumb questions. There's no dumb questions.
Sure.
I've done this 36 years. It took me a long time to compile the knowledge and information and expertise that I've got. If I can help you in any way with a question you've got about real estate, please don't, again, there's no dumb questions. Shoot me a text and do like everybody in my office does. Shoot it to me and say, hey, Wally, here's my question.
330-3000.
I'm delighted to help.
This has been House Talk with Wally Kerr on KOKC. We'll see you next Saturday morning at 7 a.m.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Dave.